Some people find peace in the sound of waves. I only hear the echo of what I've survived. The mornings on Bainbridge Island begin like a soft murmur. The sea breathes in a rhythm I once found comforting, but now it feels like a warning whispered just beneath the tide. I rise early, always before Maya, when the sky is still a blur of ash blue and the gulls haven't begun their arguments with the wind. My villa sits facing the Pacific, too large for two people, too silent for someone with a memory like mine. I light the kettle, pour her cocoa into the yellow mug she insists still smells like childhood, and set it on the dining table. Then I move to the study where the pages of my next book wait like a wound I haven't decided to reopen. Writing used to be my shield. Now, some days, it feels like exposure. Maya shuffles in hair, an untamed halo sweatshirt sleeves covering her hands. She picks up the mug, wraps her fingers around it, and mumbles, "Morning, Dad." She says it the same every day, but today something in her voice feels thinner. She takes her usual seat by the window and slides a folder across the table. Won the regional short story contest. They want to publish it. I pause mid-keystroke. "You didn't tell me you entered." She shrugs. "Didn't want to jinx it. Plus, it's personal." I glance down. The title reads, "The Net You Can't See." As I read, I feel my throat tighten. It's about a girl whose father walks into a garden filled with things he doesn't recognize, plants that look harmless but aren't. The girl notices, warns him, but he brushes it off. Only when she feigns illness does he stop and realize the danger was intentional. When I finish, Maya isn't looking at me. She stares at the sea, her hands wrapped tighter around the cocoa. "It's fiction," she says quickly. "Mostly." My voice comes out quieter than I expect. "It's brilliant. And honest." She looks at me then, eyes clearer than the ocean behind her. "I just think people should trust their gut, especially when it tells them something's wrong." Before I can respond, my phone buzzes. Voicemail. I play it on speaker without thinking. Elliot. "Darling," my mother's voice begins, coated in that velvet politeness she's perfected over the years. "We're hosting a small celebration, 35 years, can you believe it, April 15th. It would mean the world to us if you and Maya came. Just family. We'll keep it simple. I'll text the details. Click, just like that. No mention of Maya's birthday next week. No acknowledgement of the last time we saw each other or the silence that followed." I stare at the phone as if it might answer the questions I haven't asked aloud in years. Maya's gaze hasn't moved. "We don't have to go." I say nothing. "I'll go if you go," she adds after a pause. "But I don't trust them." I almost smile. That quiet steel in her voice, she didn't get it from her mother. Emily was warmth, not armor. But Maya, she's both. A fire that doesn't flare unless pushed. I walk toward the sliding doors, step onto the balcony. The ocean's wind is sharp, salted with memory. In my hand, the edges of an old photo curl against my palm. My father stiff-backed in a gray suit. My mother in red, smiling too perfectly. Me, awkward in the middle. Jason grinning like he always knew he belonged somewhere else. "Not again," I whisper. I don't realize Maya has followed until she speaks softly behind me. "Do we have an extra inhaler?" I have a weird feeling. My mother always called with love. What she never said out loud was that love for her came with receipts. The phone rang again at 8:12 p.m. Same tone, same name, same syrupy certainty beneath the ringtone. I stared at it for a full 3 rings before picking up. Maya sat across from me in the study, half buried under a blanket, pretending to read but tracking my every breath like she always did when Evelyn was involved. "Elliot, sweetheart," came the voice. "Velvet as always. I was afraid I caught you at a bad time. But I wanted to say, it means so much that you're coming." I hadn't actually said we were. Not explicitly. Her tone skipped past consent and swerved into ownership. "Your father's been talking about you all day. And Jason, he's working on a slideshow, if you can believe it. Wants to show everyone how far the family's come." "Isn't that sweet?" I paused. "We haven't decided anything yet, Mom. But darling, healing takes intention," she replied smoothly. "We all need this. I mean, we deserve it, don't we?" Maya didn't look up, but her foot tucked beneath the blanket twitched once sharply. Evelyn continued, "You've worked so hard, and Maya... Oh, I saw her in that little school newsletter, by the way." What an accomplishment. The compliment came late, and oddly placed, like a garnish thrown on an overcooked dish. We're still looking at our calendar, I said, voice level. I'll confirm in a few days. I already told everyone, she chirped. April 15th, just family, a private garden affair. It'll be lovely. Before I could object, she added, and please tell Maya I've got something special planned for her. A little surprise. She's growing into such a remarkable young lady. She hung up before I could answer. Of course. I set the phone down like it might sting. She's planning a surprise, I muttered. Maya raised an eyebrow. What kind of surprise? I shook my head. Probably a speech, a monogram bracelet, or Jason holding court again. You remember the last time Thanksgiving? Yeah, Maya said. You were seated by the dishwasher. Jason gave a 10-minute toast about family legacy while you buttered someone else's dinner roll. I chuckled despite myself. She didn't. She always makes it sound like everything's for you, Maya added, standing now stretching. But it's never really about you. Later that evening, I wandered into the hallway and found her in the bathroom quietly rummaging through the medicine cabinet. You okay? I asked. Yeah, she said quickly. Just making sure we have enough toothpaste. She was checking inhalers. I saw it in the way her fingers brushed the lower shelf, pausing on the gray pouch. It's fine, I said gently. I always keep backups. Maya didn't argue. She simply nodded and walked back to her room, her expression unreadable. I returned to my desk, intending to finish a chapter. But my fingers hovered over the keyboard, unmoving. That feeling, that soft pressure at the base of my neck, I hadn't felt it since Emily's funeral. When words came too easy from people who didn't mean them, I clicked my phone screen again, rereading Evelyn's final text. We're so happy you're coming. We want everything to be unforgettable. Why did that word crawl beneath my skin? I reached for my cocoa only to find a yellow sticky note stuck to the bottom of the mug. Maya's handwriting was small, neat, but unmistakable. I charged your backup, just in case. She didn't say anything the next morning either, just poured her cereal eyes on the window, the way the fog draped the trees beyond like curtains waiting to be pulled back. As I sipped my coffee, trying not to reread Evelyn's message for the 4th time, Maya spoke so softly I almost didn't catch it. That's what I'm afraid of. I walked into the garden my mother loved and felt like I'd just stepped onto a stage I didn't remember agreeing to perform on. The gates of the Newport Beach estate opened like the curtain rise of a play I never auditioned for. Maya sat quietly beside me, dressed in a navy blue dress that Evelyn once sent her for special occasions. She had never worn it until today. I didn't ask why she chose it now, but I wondered if, like me, she knew it was armor disguised as obedience. The car rolled up the circular drive past manicured hedges and flower beds brimming with color. Hydrangeas, roses, lavender, and then nestled between them like something trying too hard to belong, clumps of green-gold ragweed. My throat itched at the sight of them, but I said nothing. Not yet. Donald Halberg stood waiting at the top of the front steps, hands clasped behind his back, wearing a slate-gray suit that hadn't changed in style for decades. His smile was brittle like a blade kept polished for show. You're on time, he said as if surprised. Still writing books, huh? His eyes flicked to Maya. At least she has your wife's practicality. It didn't sting anymore. Not in the way it used to. I simply nodded and said, Good to see you, Dad. Evelyn appeared beside him, draped in a red silk dress that shimmered in the afternoon light. Maya, she cooed, pulling her in for a kiss. You've grown into such a beauty. Your grandmother's proud. Her eyes met mine, briefly, smile still perfectly in place. Come, come, she said. Everything's ready. Jason's inside. Maya walked slightly behind me as we entered. I could feel her gaze drifting constantly like sonar. She wasn't relaxed, but she wasn't afraid either. She was alert. Inside, the party had already begun. Champagne glasses clinked, soft jazz murmured through the speakers. Laughter floated over the scent of lemon-glazed shrimp and fresh herbs. Everything looked effortless. That was always Evelyn's gift. Jason found me before I found the courage to look for him. He was tan trim, grinning like a man who had everything he wanted and was only here to collect more. Elliot, he boomed, wrapping me in an exaggerated hug. Still making money off sad stories. Huh. Still working under Dad? I asked, keeping my tone light. Jason laughed. Come on, man. Let me show you around. Everyone wants to see the golden sun. Before I could object, he grabbed my elbow and pulled me through clusters of guests, introducing me like a trophy someone else had polished. Maya drifted behind, sipping ginger ale. I lost sight of her near the patio doors. Jason led me into the main garden. The sun was dipping low, painting the hedges in gold. Small lanterns flickered on, casting long shadows across the lawn. You should see what Mom did with the fountain, Jason said, gesturing broadly. That woman, she treats plants like her second children. He wasn't wrong. The garden was breathtaking. And then I smelled it. Not the citrus from the lemon trees or the floral notes from the roses. It was something heavier, pungent, ragweed. I coughed once subtly and glanced around. Arrangements lined the pathways. Roses mixed with something pale green. Decorative, intentional. Jason didn't notice, or he pretended not to. Your bag's back by the bench, right? He asked suddenly. You don't need anything, do you? I frowned. No. Why, just making sure. Wouldn't want you carrying it around all night. Relax. Enjoy. I forced a smile. Across the garden, I saw Maya standing beside a tall waiter with dark hair and black gloves. He was facing away from her near the bench where I'd set my bag earlier. Maya was watching him not idly, but like a scientist watching a subject misbehave. When I caught her eye, she tilted her head slightly toward the man. Then she looked down at her shoes and walked off. Jason kept talking something about market shares and Dad's new project in Oregon, but I wasn't listening. My chest had begun to tighten, not dangerously, but enough to remind me I wasn't imagining things. I turned, looking back at the bench. The waiter was gone. I told myself I was being paranoid, but when I returned to the patio where Maya now stood with a glass of water, her face was pale. Her gaze wasn't on me or the crowd or even the garden. It was locked on something near the fountain. I followed her eyes. There, behind the main arch, a small crate sat beside a wheelbarrow partially obscured by topiary. I recognized the leaves spilling from it. Ragweed, lots of it. Maya didn't blink. She just murmured, Dad, I think we need to leave, now. The moment I saw Maya drop to the ground clutching her stomach, I knew something was terribly wrong. But I didn't know she was saving my life. The music had swelled to a soft swing, the kind my parents thought elegant. Waiters glided like phantoms with trays of foie gras and champagne. Laughter shimmered on the surface of the gathering like pond light. Everything had the gloss of perfection, and none of it felt real. Jason sidled up again this time, with a hand resting too casually on my shoulder. Big bro, he said, grinning. Dad wants to introduce you to a couple of investors' real estate guys. They're huge fans of your books. I gestured toward the bench. One sec, I need to grab my bag first. His hand clamped tighter. Relax, man. It's safe. Nobody here's gonna run off with your manuscript. I tried to step past him. Jason. But he was already nudging me toward the far end of the garden. Come on, just 5 minutes. Don't make Dad wait. Across the crowd, I caught a glimpse of Maya. She was standing still near a knot of guests, her back rigid. She was staring not at me, not at Jason, but past both of us toward the driveway. Then she fell. There was no warning, no cry, just a sudden collapse, like a puppet with its strings severed. Her hands clutched her stomach as she curled into the grass. Maya. My voice cracked the air. People turned. Glasses froze midair. Someone dropped a napkin. I pushed away from Jason and bolted. She was shaking, her forehead slick with sweat. Her voice came out in gasps. It hurts. It hurt so bad I knelt beside her, my hands trembling. Tell me where. Tell me what hurts. My stomach. I can't. I need to go, Dad, please. Footsteps thundered in. Evelyn's heels clicked to a halt beside me. Oh my God, what happened? What's wrong with her? I don't know. I'm taking her now. She crouched. Voice sticky sweet. Darling, let me call an ambulance. It'll be faster. No, I said. Donald arrived, hands in pockets like he was inspecting a painting. She'll be fine. Let the medics come. Overreaction never helps. Maya's hand gripped mine with more strength than I expected. Please, Dad. she whispered. Take me now. Jason tried to intercept as I moved to lift her. Wait, Elliot, just think it through. Ambulance is probably already on the way. You don't want to make a scene. I looked straight at him. I think we've passed that line. Then I picked her up. She was lighter than I remembered. Her arms clung to my neck as I turned toward the villa's side gate. Where are you going? Evelyn called behind me. No answer. I walked fast. My heart beat harder with every step, partly from panic, partly from a growing sense of dread that had no name until I reached the driveway. That's when I saw it. A delivery truck. Its back doors open. Men in gloves unloading crates stacked with floral bundles. Pale green stems. Golden fronds. Ragweed. My breath caught. I stopped short. The scent hadn't reached me yet, but it was close. Maya stirred in my arms. Keep going, she whispered, urgent, but calm. Don't stop. I reached the car, wrestled the door open, and laid her gently in the passenger seat. She winced, still in character, but I noticed her eyes were sharper now, the pain no longer consuming her expression. I slid into the driver's seat, shoved the keys into the ignition, and turned. The engine started with a growl. Then I heard her voice again, quieter this time, but like a blade sliding under my ribs. They took your inhaler. I saw them. At 14, Maya became my bodyguard, and I, the grown man, the father, had almost missed the ambush. The road from Newport to Bainbridge was darker than I remembered. Maybe because this time I wasn't just trying to escape a party, I was trying to leave behind something far heavier. My hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough to turn the knuckles pale. Maya sat beside me, upright now, no longer pretending to be in pain. Her breathing was steady. Her silence was louder than any scream I'd ever heard. We didn't talk until we reached a turnout overlooking the Sound. A sliver of moonlight stretched across the water like a vein of silver. I pulled over, killed the engine, let the stillness settle. Maya turned to me. Do you want to see it? I blinked. See what? She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved quickly, deliberately. A video started playing. The screen showed a wide shot of the party. Shaky like a 14-year-old was trying to be invisible. The garden fountain shimmered in the background. I spotted myself standing beside Jason. Then came the waiter. The same one from earlier, glancing over his shoulder before crouching by the bench. He opened my bag. Jason stepped into frame. He handed the waiter something small, cylindrical. The waiter pocketed it, glanced around, walked off like nothing had happened. I watched it twice before I could breathe again. That's not all, Maya said quietly. She opened another file, an audio recording, just a black screen with a red timer. I left my phone hidden near the fountain, she said, right after you told me to relax. The audio hissed for a moment, wind chatter, clinking glasses. Then Evelyn's voice. Just make sure the garden is ready. The rest will happen naturally. A man replied, low, unsure. You're certain the ragweed won't trigger someone else? Evelyn laughed. Don't be silly. He's the only one with that allergy. And we've made sure his fallback plan is unavailable. A long pause. Then Donald's voice. We don't need a scene, just timing. Maya paused the clip. I was shaking. Everything I had tried to explain away, every uneasy glance, every carefully placed compliment, every delayed smile had a name now: intent. I looked at my daughter. Her face was calm, but her eyes were fierce. I didn't know what to do, she said. So I played sick. That was the fastest way I could think of to get you out. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. Just air bitter on my tongue. I thought I was being paranoid, I said finally. I thought I was just projecting. Old wounds. You weren't, Maya replied. They were setting you up. Slowly, quietly. She looked out toward the sea. They don't just hate that you left, she said. They hate that you never needed them to come back. I stared ahead, at nothing. The silence between us felt sacred now, shared, earned. You saved me, I said. Maya didn't flinch. Not yet, she said. But I will. Let's stop them together. I nodded, something inside me settling, and something else long buried snapping awake. My daughter wasn't just trying to protect me. She was reminding me who I was before their control made me smaller. I turned the key. The engine roared back to life. The dashboard lights lit up, casting us in pale green glow. I stared out at the winding road ahead and said, "First we go home, then we go to war." I used to write about betrayal in fiction. Today, I needed a lawyer to survive it in real life. James Eckhart's office looked like it had been designed by someone who hated chaos and paid to keep it far away. The walls were soft gray, the furniture a quiet conversation of leather and steel. No paintings, just clean lines, a ticking clock, and the man himself dressed in slate blue and precision. I hadn't seen him in over a year, not since my last book contract. But he looked the same. Calm, efficient. The kind of man who didn't flinch when truth arrived bloody and uninvited. "Elliot," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "When you said it was urgent, I cleared the morning." "What's going on?" I took a breath. Then I told him everything. About the garden, the ragweed, the waiter with the stolen inhaler, Maya collapsing to get us out, Evelyn's voice on a recording that should have stayed fictional. I spoke fast, but not recklessly. James listened like a surgeon, silent, absorbing, waiting for the exact incision point. When I finished, he leaned back, exhaled once, then said, "You brought the footage." I nodded, slid Maya's phone across the desk. He plugged it into his laptop, eyes flicking over the screen as he scrubbed through the first video. When the inhaler disappeared into the waiter's pocket, his jaw tightened. Then came the audio. Evelyn's voice measured, clinical. Donald's tone strategic, detached. James didn't speak until the file stopped. "This isn't just negligence," he said. "This is deliberate, coordinated." He tapped his keyboard. "Under Washington law, we're not just looking at moral wrongdoing. This could qualify as criminal endangerment, possibly attempted harm with intent to incapacitate." I stared at the wood grain in the desk. They were going to let me collapse in front of my daughter. James's voice lowered. "No, Elliot. They were going to make sure you didn't get up." Outside the glass wall behind him, downtown Seattle went about its day, unaware that a man in this room had just been told his family wanted him erased. I rubbed my temples. What do I do? We strike first. Today, James said, already moving. We shift every asset into a trust immediately. Maya becomes the sole beneficiary. That removes incentive, and it secures her future if they try again. I blinked. "You can do that now. I can start the paperwork in 20 minutes. We'll begin with the Bainbridge Villa." As if summoned, James's computer pinged. A new email. His eyes narrowed. He clicked, then swore under his breath. "What?" I asked. He turned the screen toward me. An alert from the King County Recorder's Office. A filing had been submitted just that morning. Jason Halberg, representing Halberg Real Estate Holdings LLC, had filed an intent to transfer title of the Bainbridge property to the company, to his company. My voice dropped. How would he even have access? Probably drafted using an old power of attorney template from before Emily passed. James muttered, "It won't hold, but the attempt itself is aggressive." I stared at the screen. My name was still on the deed, but beside it, in a fresh digital notation, sat a challenge. A claim. "They've been preparing," I whispered. "Not just emotionally, legally, strategically." James nodded. This wasn't about a grudge. This was an execution plan that failed. The door behind me creaked. Maya stepped in quietly, holding 2 cups of tea from the lounge's machine. "Chamomile or lemon ginger?" she said softly. "I didn't know which you'd need more." James gave her a nod. "You're sharper than half my clients." She smiled, but there was no playfulness in her eyes. James looked back at me. "If they're accelerating that fast, we have to be faster. Are you willing to fight? Jason used to follow me around as a kid. Now he follows my money." The house was quiet. Too quiet. Maya had gone to bed 2 hours ago, but I knew she wasn't asleep. Not really. She had that same habit I did, staying alert when things stopped making noise. That was when trouble usually showed up. I sat at my desk, the light from my laptop casting long shadows across the bookshelves. The villa no longer felt like a retreat. It felt like a perimeter I had to defend. I started digging. Not into memories for once, but into files, contracts, bank statements, emails I hadn't read closely until now. I wasn't looking for rage. I was looking for patterns. Jason had always been loud about his ignorance. He pretended not to understand publishing IP rights royalties. But tonight, as I filtered through metadata on my old files, I saw his digital fingerprints, an access log from 6 months ago, my 2018 publishing contract with Crosslight Press, viewed remotely from an IP address registered to Halberg REHQ. I traced it through the router data I had kept synced one of Emily's old backup habits. I'd never thought to disable it. Jason had looked into my rights to the Fire Archive, my highest-selling book, the one still generating monthly income. I leaned back, bile rising. That night at Thanksgiving 2 years ago, Jason carving turkey with all the subtlety of a salesman. He'd leaned over during dessert and asked all too casually, "So, if you disappeared, who gets your copyrights?" I'd laughed then. I wasn't laughing now. I clicked through more alerts. One from my bank's customer service thread, a record of an information request made under my name but submitted from an account not tied to mine. The request: clarification of representative authority for asset management if client is incapacitated. The email was signed Jason Halberg. It had been archived. No notification ever sent to me. I reached for my phone, scrolled through old voicemail transcriptions, and paused. "Hi, Mr. Halberg," one read. "This is Catherine from Summit Bank's Advisory Division. Just wanted to confirm the discussion you had last week regarding representative transfer rights. Let me know when you're ready to proceed." My mouth went dry. They were all preparing for me to vanish. And I had been writing chapters and sipping cocoa like a man narrating his own downfall. I was still staring at the screen when Maya appeared silently at the door holding her blanket. "You okay?" she asked. I gestured to the screen. "Jason's been accessing my contracts, trying to set up a transfer, even made contact with the bank." She came closer, frowned. "Remember last fall, when you had that safe in your closet and couldn't find the combination card? I looked up." "Yeah. I saw Jason near it one night," she said. "I didn't think much of it then. He said he was looking for the bathroom." Her voice faltered, but her eyes stayed sharp. My phone buzzed just as I opened another folder. "Claire." I picked up, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. "Claire Elliott," she said gently. "I heard some version of what happened. Maya, okay." I looked at my daughter, who was now sitting on the edge of the desk, hugging her knees. "She's sharper than all of us," I said. "But yeah, she's safe." Claire exhaled. "Good. That girl, she's different." There was a pause. "Then don't wait too long to respond. The moment you stay silent, they win twice." I didn't reply, not directly. I thanked her, promised to keep in touch. After I hung up, I turned back to the screen. One last file, a PDF, buried under some innocuous family financials in a shared folder I rarely touched. It was titled Trust Amendment, Draft V2. I opened it. It looked like a scanned legal document. Donald Halberg's signature, a typed clause about asset redistribution upon primary beneficiary incapacitation. At the bottom, authorized witness Jason Halberg. The signature was clean, too clean. I stared at it until my vision blurred. My phone buzzed again. A message. "Jason family doesn't need lawyers. Unless you want war. Some people barge into your life. Others sit beside you quietly until you realize they've been holding your hand all along." The school library smelled of old paper and lemon polish. The windows let in a hesitant spring light, soft and tentative. I sat at the back quietly as Claire Monroe stood before a semicircle of students, discussing the power of voice in narrative. Maya sat in the front row, chin resting on one hand, the other tapping her pencil in thoughtful rhythm. Claire was nothing like I'd imagined when Maya first spoke about her. I'd pictured someone crisp and precise. Instead, she carried a kind of quiet gravity, emotionally grounded like a lighthouse that didn't need to blink loudly to guide ships home. After class, Claire walked over to me with a warm, unobtrusive smile. "Thanks for coming. Maya insisted you'd want to see her present her draft." "She wasn't wrong," I said. "She never is." Claire glanced toward Maya, who was gathering her papers. "That piece she wrote about the girl who unravels a lie by following silence. That's not just fiction, it's insight." We left the school together and after a few blocks found ourselves in a cafe near the ferry terminal. It wasn't fancy, just wood tables, chalkboard menus. the clink of real ceramic cups. Claire sat across from me, hands wrapped around a mug of mint tea. She carries more than most kids I know, she said. Grief has sharpened her, but it hasn't hardened her. She says you remind her of her mom, I said softly. Claire looked down, a slight smile tugging at the edge of her mouth. That's kind. She meant it in the best way. Said you make her think about Emily in a way that doesn't hurt. Claire nodded, eyes distant. I was orphaned at 12, raised by an aunt who did her best but didn't quite know what to do with a kid who had more questions than answers. I used to hide in school libraries just to breathe. I said nothing. I didn't want to interrupt the current that had opened between us. She looked up. That's why I see her, not just her grades, her emotional cues, her restraint. I recognize it. The words lingered. Then I said the thing I hadn't said to anyone, not even James. I'm terrified I'm a bad father. Claire blinked. Why? Because I didn't see it coming, I said. The trap, the garden, the ragweed. I was right there. And I stopped. My throat closed. Claire leaned forward slightly. You're not a bad father, Elliot. You're just someone trying to protect your child in a world where family doesn't always mean safe. Something inside me cracked. Not broken, but released. Like I'd been holding my breath for a year. I nodded. That was all I could do. When we left the cafe, Maya was sitting on the bench near the ferry terminal, legs crossed, earbuds in. She looked up as we approached, smiled faintly. You guys talk long, she said. Claire grinned. We discussed the weight of the universe. Maya rolled her eyes but didn't push. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small flash drive, handed it to me. What's this? Maya just said you should watch this tonight. I recorded more than you know. There's a moment when even the strongest father wants to run. That night, I almost did. The rain began sometime after sunset, thick, angry drops that hammered the villa's glass like a warning. Thunder rolled distantly as if the world outside had decided to echo what was unraveling inside me. I was in the living room, the TV on mute, headlines scrolling across the bottom, an unforgiving white best-selling author at center of family legal feud. Halberg Real Estate responds to false claims of attempted harm. No charges filed, no police report available. A knock on the door hours earlier had brought more than sound. A courier in a soaked raincoat handed me an envelope from a local law firm. Jason's signature was sharp on the header. Notice of civil complaint, public defamation. I hadn't even spoken to the press. But apparently, the moment James filed the restraining order and began asset shielding, Jason struck where it hurt most: reputation. According to the filing, I had intentionally maligned the character of my family, causing emotional and financial distress, jeopardizing public trust in the Halberg name. I hadn't known silence could be that loud until I tried to read those words out loud and failed. I stayed in the chair long after Maya had retreated upstairs. The lights remained off. The only illumination came from the TV's cold flicker and the occasional flash of lightning splitting across the waterline. And for the first time since I walked out of my childhood home at 18, I felt it again. The want to leave. Not just the villa. Everything. I heard footsteps but didn't look up. It was Maya. She didn't speak at first. Just walked into the room like it was on fire, and she had chosen not to flinch. She sat on the floor right in front of me, her knees drawn to her chest. Her hair was slightly damp from her shower. She stared at me for a long time before saying anything. You don't look like Dad right now. I didn't respond. You look like a man who's about to give away everything he's ever built just because someone filed paperwork. Still nothing. Maya leaned her head back against the couch. You know, Claire says, if you don't break, they'll get louder, but if you do break, it's over. Her voice didn't rise, it just waited. I felt her hand touch mine. I need you to come back, she said, not for court, not for the villa, for me. Because if you stop now, they win. Not just over you, but over me too. Tears came so fast I didn't realize I was crying until her grip tightened. The doorbell rang a few minutes later. Claire stood on the porch holding a thermos wrapped in a towel and a paper bag that smelled like rosemary and chicken. She didn't say much. Just came inside, set the food down, and sat beside me on the couch. We didn't speak for a long while. Then softly, as though finishing Maya's sentence, Claire said, "They want to exhaust you until surrender feels like peace." I looked at her, at Maya, at the house we had made together from wreckage and quiet mornings. I wasn't ready, but I was no longer alone. I squeezed Maya's hand. "Tomorrow," I said slowly. Voice rough from disuse, I hit back. "They tried to turn the garden into a battlefield. I'll turn their words into weapons." The sun hadn't risen yet, but my study was already glowing lit by the screen of my laptop and the quiet resolve building inside me. The house was still. Maya was asleep upstairs. Claire had left a note after staying the night on the guest couch. "You already know what you need to say. Just say it." I opened a blank document. Not for a novel this time, for a reckoning. The timeline came first dates, names, moments I could now see clearly thanks to Maya's footage and memory. April 15th, ragweed delivery confirmed by florist receipt, Maya discreetly photographed. 9:42 p.m., Maya fakes abdominal pain. 10:13 p.m. truck arrives. 10:26 p.m. recorded audio of Evelyn referencing the garden being ready. I embedded the audio clips, attached the phone video of the waiter taking my inhaler. Then I wrote a statement not for the court but for the world. What happens when the people who raised you, fed you, taught you your name, also plot your disappearance? It wasn't just a betrayal, it was choreography. A long rehearsal where I'd played the oblivious lead. I saved the file. James called at 700 sharp. I didn't even wait for him to say hello. "They won a war," I said. "Let's give them a headline first." His chuckle was brief. "I already filed the restraining order. But I need to tell you, Jason amended his complaint. He's now claiming you coached Maya to fake illness." My throat clenched. "He's dragging her in, he's desperate. But listen, your best defense right now is offense. You still want to go public." I looked at the open draft. "More than ever." "Then I'll back you up. Official complaints are ready. Civil and criminal, including theft of medical property and attempted endangerment. When the article hits, we'll file them the same day. Pressure from all angles." I nodded slowly. "And Claire?" She texted me. "She's willing to go on record." As if summoned by her name, I heard a soft knock at the study door. Claire appeared holding 2 mugs. Black or suicidal strong. I took the one with steam still curling up like intention. "Thanks for staying." She shrugged, but her eyes said she understood more than I could articulate. "I'll drive Maya to school," she said. "You've got writing to do." "I'm not writing," I said. "I'm declaring." When they left, I opened my email. Found the address of a journalist I'd met after my TED Talk in San Francisco, Grace Thorne. Sharp, relentless. She once grilled a philanthropist on national TV for laundering charity funds. She wasn't just a journalist. She was a storm with Wi-Fi. Subject line, "A story you won't believe until you hear it." I kept the body short. "Hi Grace, imagine this, a New York Times best-selling author, a prestigious family with a real estate empire, a garden party, a missing inhaler, a 14-year-old daughter who saw it all and saved her father. This isn't fiction. It's me. I have footage, audio, a signed attempt to seize property. Question is, what happens when a famous writer is nearly murdered by his own family and decides to write it live? Let me know if you're listening. Elliot Halberg." I clicked send. Then sat back, breathing in the charged air of a morning no longer dictated by fear. 40 minutes later, the reply came. From Grace Thorne. Subject: a story. "You won't believe until you hear it, I'm listening. But once this airs, there's no going back." I stared at the screen, then typed, "Good. Let the world see them." They toasted to legacy under the stars. I nearly suffocated in the garden they planted. The King County Courthouse didn't look like justice. It looked like waiting rooms and marble too cold for comfort. The kind of place where truth had to file in line behind process. Maya held my hand as we walked through the atrium. Her fingers were steady. Mine? Not so much. James was already there, pacing near the security checkpoint, a manila folder tucked under one arm like it held the trigger to an old war. "You're early, Gaul," he said, then nodded toward Maya. "Good. She's calm. Calmer than me," I said. The hearing wasn't a criminal trial yet. This was just the beginning, the restraining order. The freeze motion, a statement to the court that family didn't always mean safe. The clerk called our case mid-morning. The courtroom had only a few people, but it felt full. The walls seemed to lean in. I took my seat, and that's when I saw them. Donald, Evelyn, Jason, all dressed in somber gray and navy like they were here to mourn someone else's mistake. Evelyn had pearls around her neck and a look of motherly confusion that could have won her an Emmy. Donald sat stiff, his jaw locked. Jason lounged like it was a business seminar and he already knew the outcome. The judge Honoro, Deborah Mackay, reviewed the initial paperwork, then looked up over her reading glasses. Mr. Halberg, you're requesting an emergency protection order against 3 family members. James stood. Correct, Your Honor. The petitioner alleges attempted harm through environmental sabotage and theft of critical medical equipment. We have video medical history and supporting testimony. Judge Mackay turned to me. Mr. Halberg, do you wish to speak? I stood, my voice steady but low. They knew I was allergic. They knew I needed my inhaler to survive. On April 15th, during their garden party, my inhaler went missing. Minutes later, a truck unloaded ragweed flowers directly into the space where I was seated. The judge raised an eyebrow. And you believe this was deliberate? I opened my mouth, but Maya spoke first. She stood. No permission asked. Just stood. I watched them, she said. I'm 14 and I recorded the waiter stealing my dad's inhaler. I overheard my grandmother say, "Make sure the garden is ready." My uncle handed something to that waiter, and my grandfather was standing by the fountain giving orders like it was a play. Her voice didn't crack. They smiled the whole time, she said. They smiled and hugged and took photos and tried to kill my dad with flowers. Silence. Even Jason's smirk dimmed. James stepped forward. We've submitted audio clips, time-stamped video allergy documentation and communication records indicating a pattern of manipulation and legal overreach, including an unauthorized attempt to transfer Mr. Halberg's property into corporate holdings. Donald's lawyer, a man named Redmond, with eyes like damp steel, rose, smoothing his lapel. With all due respect, Your Honor, this is a gross misinterpretation of family dynamics. This teenager is understandably emotional. The flowers were part of a garden restoration contract. There is no proof that anyone removed Mr. Halberg's inhaler. It's a tragic misunderstanding weaponized into litigation. Judge Mackay didn't blink. She turned back to Maya. Young lady, do you still have the original recordings? Maya nodded. On my phone and backed up to Google Drive and a USB. I could see the moment the judge made her decision. This court issues an emergency protection order effective immediately, she said, voice clipped and final. All asset transfers linked to the Halberg estate or its affiliates are frozen pending review. Mr. Elliot Halberg and his minor daughter are to have no contact with the respondents for the duration of the order. Evelyn's lips parted. Donald muttered something inaudible. Jason just stared at me across the aisle. And smiled. After the ruling, as we exited into the cold, gray Seattle afternoon, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could breathe again. But then Jason stepped beside me in the parking lot, his voice low and sharp. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. They wanted a legacy. I gave them headlines. The studio lights weren't as blinding as I'd expected. They were soft, intentional, designed to make honesty look good on camera. But honesty was never about lighting. It was about being willing to bleed on cue. Across from me sat Grace Thorne, impeccably composed in her navy blazer, tablet in hand. Her expression was clinical, but her eyes burned with quiet fire. We're live in 5, a producer whispered. I nodded, adjusted my lapel mic. Maya and Claire sat just off camera. I could see Maya's knees bouncing gently. Claire reached over, steadied her hand. A red light blinked. We're on, Grace said into the camera, voice smooth. Tonight on Seattle, inside we speak to best-selling author Elliot Halberg, a man whose most recent story is not on shelves but in headlines. Betrayal, family, survival. Mr. Halberg, thank you for joining us. Thank you, I said, voice tight, but even. She began at the beginning my book's Emily's accident, raising Maya alone. You've spoken on stages around the world about resilience, Grace said, but you never imagined needing that resilience against your own blood, did you? I shook my head. No, and certainly not in the form it took. Grace tapped her screen. Let's talk about April 15th. A garden party. ragweed, a missing inhaler. I recounted it all. The arrival, the smiles to rehearse Jason's grip on my arm, Maya's staged collapse the truck, the scent in the air like a warning wearing perfume. And your daughter? Grace turned slightly. She saw more than you did. Maya stepped forward, took the seat beside me. She wore a blue blouse Claire had helped her pick hair pulled back in a soft braid. She didn't fidget, didn't blink too much. I saw the waiter take the inhaler, she said. I heard my grandma on the phone say, "Make sure the flowers arrive on time." I knew my dad was allergic to ragweed. I knew. They knew too. Grace nodded solemnly. We've obtained that audio. Let's listen. A short clip played, Evelyn's voice clear, measured unmistakably hers. Just make sure the flowers arrive on time. He needs to be outside by sunset. The studio fell into a moment of complete reverent silence. Then Grace looked directly at the camera. Mr. Halberg, some say family is sacred. What do you say? I looked at her. Then at Maya. Then into the lens where millions of strangers now stared back. If family isn't love, I said, my voice low and unwavering, it's just a contract. And mine is void. The red light on the camera faded. The interview cut to commercial. But the flood had already begun. Tweets, live comments, hashtags, had believe Elliot, hash protect Maya, hash Halberg scandal. The tide wasn't turning, it had turned, and it was loud. Backstage, Claire hugged Maya. James texted a single word, boom. For a moment, I allowed myself to breathe. The truth was out. The silence was broken. But then my phone buzzed again. An email from Jason's lawyer, re-countersuit, Halberg et al. V. Halberg. Notice of intent to file civil defamation claim, $10,000. Jason had made his move. Again. They laughed when I left the family. They didn't know I'd take its name with me. The day began quietly, like so many others lately, pancakes on a cast iron pan, Claire humming a tune Maya couldn't identify, and my phone face down on the kitchen counter. But silence no longer meant safety for the Halbergs. For them, it had become a verdict. Claire flipped a pancake, her sleeves rolled up, hair messily tied. Maya poured syrup onto her plate with more ceremony than necessary. It tastes better when the villain loses, she said. I almost smiled. The TV in the background switched from weather to breaking news. Claire reached for the remote, but I stopped her. The anchor spoke with calm intensity. This morning, a judge in King County Superior Court officially denied the $10 million defamation suit filed by Jason Halberg, citing lack of evidence and the plaintiff's refusal to appear in person. A photo of Jason headshot from some company brochure flashed briefly before dissolving into a video of reporters swarming outside the Halberg estate. The case has sparked national attention since last week's televised interview featuring Elliot Halberg and his daughter Maya, who accused their family of premeditated endangerment. The anchor paused as the screen changed again. In addition, an anonymous tip now confirmed by a former gardener employed by the Halberg states that the ragweed plants delivered on April 15th were specifically requested by Evelyn Halberg. This contradicts the family's earlier statements about seasonal arrangements chosen by staff. Claire set the spatula down slowly. Maya looked at me not with triumph, but with something quieter, something like peace. I turned off the TV. James called 30 minutes later. The storm's not over, he said. It's just changed direction. What now? Federal auditors just opened a review into Halberg Real Estate's internal funds, estate records, inheritance disbursements. Jason's been moving money between shell entities. I didn't ask how he knew. James always knew. Also, he added Jason's name just got flagged at the Oregon border. TSA picked up on a one-way ticket to Phoenix. He didn't show up at the gate. He ran. Yes. And the local authorities just upgraded his status from witness to person of interest. There's now a formal warrant for questioning. I hung up, then walked to the balcony. The sea below looked the same as ever, but something in the air felt different, like a curtain pulled back after a long performance. I watched the waves for a long time. Claire joined me a while later, holding 2 mugs. She said nothing, just handed me one. Then she leaned on the railing, sipping quietly, eyes on the horizon. We didn't speak about Evelyn, or Donald, or Jason. We didn't need to. Some things collapse loud. Some collapse so completely the silence feels like thunder. For the first time in years, I locked the door just because it was habit, not because I was scared. There was something different in the air that evening, not just the salt breeze curling off the water or the scent of fresh paint drying in Maya's room. It was the quiet, a kind of quiet that didn't watch over its shoulder. Claire had been on a mission since sunrise. She'd marched into Maya's room, rolled up her sleeves, and announced, "We're changing the color. That green is too sad for a 14-year-old who just saved the world." Maya had laughed, really laughed, and chosen a pale lilac that made the room glow even before the light bulbs came back on. I spent most of the morning on the rooftop finishing my manuscript, Ragweed Season. Not a memoir, not entirely. But every word in it carried the scent of what we'd lived through. Betrayal, survival, and Maya, always Maya, cutting through the fog with a clarity I'd once believed belonged only to adults. Claire found me there as I typed the final sentence. "You done?" I nodded. "It's raw, but it's honest." She held something behind her back. I was going to wait, but she hesitated. "Maybe you need this now." She handed me an envelope, old, worn, yellowed at the edges. My name was written in Emily's cursive. Inside one folded page. Elliot. "If you're reading this, it means Maya's growing up without me. I hate that. Please tell her I love her more than words, that her laugh was my favorite sound. And if one day you feel like you failed her, remember this, you didn't. The very fact that you're reading this to her means you're still here. And that's enough. Love, always, M." I didn't cry immediately. I read it aloud slowly as Maya curled up beside me on the deck chair, and Claire rested her head on my shoulder. By the time I finished, none of us spoke. Not because we didn't have words, but because none of them could hold what that letter gave us. Later, we ate outside chicken. Claire grilled vegetables, Maya claimed she chopped, and lemonade that was too sweet but too perfect to fix. Claire's cat, a ginger tabby named Marlowe, had finally decided to visit. He strolled across the table like he'd always belonged, flicked his tail into my glass, and then curled into Maya's lap with a purr that could have lulled the moon to sleep. Maya leaned against me. "Miss Claire says I'm getting a scholarship letter soon." I turned to Claire. She shrugged. "She earned it. I just nudged the right doors." "And you?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Any doors you're thinking of walking through?" Claire looked at me, eyes lit by the glow of citronella candles, and something gentler, something like choosing. I didn't press. Not yet. Maya stood and stretched. "I'm going to bed early. For once." As she disappeared inside, I lingered at the table. Claire stayed. For the first time in months, I didn't reach for my phone to check security cameras. I didn't test the door locks twice. Instead, I just sat listening to the sea and the distant sound of Maya humming in her room, as if nothing could touch her anymore. Claire looked at me across the dinner table, one brow arched. Ready to start a new chapter. When justice comes late, it doesn't whisper. It knocks. The morning was still sky-brushed with the soft coral light of June. Waves rolled in slow rhythm, folding over themselves with a peace I hadn't known in years. I stood barefoot on the beach behind the villa, holding an envelope addressed in my handwriting. Inside was the final letter I would ever send to the Halbergs. There will be no reconciliation. You already buried that. No signature. No return address. Just closure. I dropped it into the mailbox at the end of the lane, listened to the soft thunk as it disappeared, and with it, a chapter of my life finally sealed shut. Later that morning, we stood in a hallway of the county courthouse, not as adversaries, but as a quiet unit. James handed me a copy of the finalized trust paperwork. "Maya's protected now," he said, irrevocably. Jason's name was now attached to 3 formal charges: forgery, attempted fraud, and conspiracy to endanger. A judge had set a hearing. His lawyer had gone silent. Donald and Evelyn hadn't appeared. But the silence from their end was louder than any rebuttal. We didn't stay long. I declined the cluster of microphones waiting outside. "Mr. Halberg, can we know statements today?" I said, holding Maya's hand as we walked past. "No headlines, just real life." Instead, I saved my words for the one place that mattered. That evening, Maya stood on a small stage in her school auditorium. She'd won the regional award for youth fiction. Claire and I sat in the front row just like she'd sat for me months ago when the world first turned upside down. When Maya finished her reading, the principal surprised us. "We've invited a special guest to close our evening, Mr. Elliot Halberg." I wasn't expecting it. But as I walked on stage, the pages of Ragweed Season tucked in my jacket pocket, I realized it felt right. I used to write stories that helped other people heal. I began voice quiet over the mic. Then my daughter reminded me I still needed to heal myself. I opened to a marked page. It took a girl with a sharp eye and a louder heart to remind me who I was. Not a name, not a legacy. Just a man who nearly forgot how to live until she pointed the way back. The audience didn't clap at first. They just listened. And that silence was everything I needed. Later we returned home, the three of us, walking along the sand under a sliver of moonlight. Claire slipped her hand into mine. Maya walked ahead, Marlowe trotting beside her like a chaperone with soft paws. I stopped at the shoreline, watching the tide nudge toward our feet. "This," I said, glancing at them both, "is the only family I will ever need." Claire didn't respond. She just leaned into me, solid and steady. Maya turned, smiling. "So, Dad, you know that documentary offer?" I blinked. "What?" She grinned. "Your publisher called. Said a production company wants to option your story." I laughed. I hadn't even seen the email. "They want to know if you're in," she said, half teasing. "You in?" I looked at her, then at Claire, then up at the stars. "Let me ask my daughter first." Justice didn't arrive with fireworks. It came through a daughter's quiet defiance and a father's choice to stop running. The ones who built their legacy on control and silence were undone not by revenge but by truth spoken out loud. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If this story moved you, like, share, and leave a comment below. Type 1 if you felt deeply connected, or 2 if something still felt unresolved.